you're on.
We've all been treated unfairly at some point in our lives. Maybe by someone in a position of authority. The injustice makes us mad. It's infuriating. And it can take over reason. That's just what happened to Kelly Taylor. His anger and hatred towards Judge Rob Cañas boiled over. And he openly vowed on July 6, 2007, "I swear I'll burn you for this." To show how deeply his sense of outrage went, how serious he was about revenge, he also put it in writing. "I swear I'll burn you for this one." Later that same day, he turned his hate into action, grabbing a trophy from the judge's desk and bludgeoned Judge Rob Cañas to death. Now, Mr. Kelly Taylor, the defendant here today, is a high-priced intellectual property attorney here in Armadillo. He had a case in front of Judge Cañas, a high-profile case that ended on the same day as Judge Cañas' murder. Mr. Taylor had worked on it for a very long time. He had invested $800,000 of his own money, and he stood to only get paid if he won. Now, Mr. Taylor had tried cases in Judge Cañas' courtroom before, and every opportunity that the judge had, he ruled against Kelly Taylor, often costing him a lot of money. But on July 6, 2007, the jury returned a verdict in favor of Mr. Taylor's client, awarding him $10 million. Now, Mr. Taylor was on a 30% contingent fee, which means that from that verdict, he stood to take home $3 million. But what did Judge Cañas do? He called the attorneys back into his chambers, and he took the verdict away from Mr. Taylor and his client. He didn't give an explanation. He didn't give a reason. He took away Mr. Taylor's win and Mr. Taylor's $3 million. And what was Mr. Taylor's response? He said, "I'll burn you for this." But not only that, he wrote it down. He wrote a note to the judge that said, "I swear I'll burn you for this one." Now, Mr. Taylor left the judge's chambers at 7 o'clock that evening. The next morning, the judge was found slumped in a chair in his chambers, dead. Next to the judge was a trophy. And on that trophy was the judge's blood and Kelly Taylor's fingerprints. Now, we, the prosecution, will present two witnesses today, Mr. Chris Jensen and Dr. Alex Slavin. And both of them will testify to their investigations surrounding the death of Judge Cañas. Chris Jensen is an investigator for the Bexar County District Attorney's Office. He is an experienced, competent, well-respected investigator who spent 15 years with the FBI prior to coming to Armadillo. Chris Jensen investigated the scene of Judge Cañas' death on July 7th, 2007. And he will tell us today that he witnessed the wound on the back of Judge Cañas' head, that he took pictures of the scene, which we will be able to see today, that he found a trophy next to the judge's body, that he tested the blood on that trophy and found it to match that of Judge Cañas, and that he tested the fingerprints on that trophy and found those to match that of the defendant, Kelly Taylor. And finally, he will tell us of the note he found written in Kelly Taylor's handwriting that said, "I swear I'll burn you for this one. And finally, Mr. Jensen will tell us that he believes, beyond any doubt at all, that Kelly Taylor killed Judge Canis. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Alex Slavin. Dr. Slavin is the chief pathologist at Bexar County Hospital. She has over 20 years' experience and has performed thousands of autopsies. Dr. Slavin will show us today that the only possible cause of Judge Canis's death was central nervous system failure brought on by the development of an epidural hematoma. Now, for those of us that aren't doctors, myself included, that sounds like a lot of complicated science and medical terms. But Dr. Slavin will explain to us that basically it means Judge Canis was killed by blunt force trauma, by being hit in the back of the head with something big and something heavy. She will explain to us what an epidural hematoma is, how one is caused, and how an epidural hematoma can lead to central nervous system failure, and how that is the only possible cause of Judge Canis's death. She will testify to the 6 indicators of an epidural hematoma that she found during her autopsy of Judge Canis. Dilated pupils, bruising, a hairline fracture of the skull, pooling of blood in the brain, decreased brain weight, which indicates a lack of fluid, and the cramped hands of the judge, which indicate central nervous system failure. After an extensive analysis, Dr. Slavin concluded that the judge was killed by being hit on the back of the head with a blunt object. Now, after we present our case, the defense will have an opportunity to present their version of the events that took place. One of the witnesses they may call is Dusty Stockard. Dusty Stockard is a pathologist here in Bexar County, and she reviewed the autopsy to determine the cause of Judge Canis's death. Now, if the defense chooses to call Dusty Stockard to the stand, she will have to admit that she never looked at the body, that she did not conduct an autopsy. She can't deny that her conclusions were based on an autopsy that she didn't conduct and on a medical report that doesn't have the judge's correct date of birth. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is your difficult and important duty to weigh the evidence and arrive at a verdict. The prosecution has an obligation to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Kelly Taylor intentionally and knowingly caused the death of Judge Rob Canis. And the state of justice embraces that burden. At the end of the presentation of evidence today, I'm going to speak to you again, and I'm going to ask you to return a verdict of guilty. And I am confident that you will be convinced, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Kelly Taylor is guilty of the murder of Judge Rob Canis.